call to order this meeting of the Environmental Commission. Take roll. Wait, take roll now, right?
Well, Commissioner Heck?
Here.
Commissioner Liu?
Here.
Vice Chair Van Race?
Here.
Chair Humayun?
Here.
Commissioner Whedon?
Here.
And Commissioner Nee?
Yeah.
And Commissioner Nee is attending virtually today. All right, we have a quorum.
Right, do we have any public comments on items not on the agenda?
Yeah, I do, which is kind of a question, a process question, like there's little cards at the city council, so I have like questions about item number 1, and I'm gonna have comments on 4 and 5, like, so what's the process? Really,
So
Great.
right now, it's just for anything not on the agenda, and then when we get to that point of the agenda, we'll call out for public comment again.
Okay, so is the public comment before 1, or is it okay if I ask a couple questions when the commissioners ask questions? Do I need to do that before number 1?
We usually do commissioner clarifying questions and then public comment, but
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
So I can
chair
answer that.
to-
That's fine.
Yeah, so you get the presentation, you get the clarifying questions before.
Okay, so I can ask the question after. Okay, great.
Is the public allowed to ask a question?
they can
Point of
ask,
order?
they can ask questions. They do ask questions to council and council can respond.
Okay.
Yeah, but no conversation, basically.
Okay. All right, so, yes, we move on then to the special presentation. Very glad to have here Ted Reeve, who's founder of the Reuse People, and Uncle Soleil, owner of Martin Enterprise. And they will be telling us a little bit about their work on deconstruction, as well as I, as a member of the public, will be sharing my experience with deconstruction. So that part I'll be. So how do you want to start? Maybe we can start with Ted.
Okay, yeah, I'm Ted Wright with the Reuse People. And we've been in business a little over 31 years. One of the real originators in deconstruction. In that time, we have been participating in over 4,000 deconstruction projects. I'd say throughout the country, but it's mostly in California. We're in about 4 or 5 other, 6 other states. But again, most of our activity was there. We were founded originally in San Diego. In that time period, we have hit almost, I don't know whether we will this year or not, but close to 500,000 tons of materials have been diverted. And we're a nonprofit organization, started out that way and have been. We've got about 35 employees, most of them based here in the Bay Area. We do. We used to do deconstruction, and about 3 or 4 years ago, we stopped doing deconstruction because we had trained so many talented contractors, like Encore here, the local man who will discuss what he does. But we decided there was no sense in us competing with them. They were doing such a good job of deconstruction. We are located in Oakland. We have 40,000 square feet of retail space. We have another, I don't know, 5, 6, 7,000 of backup storage on that, and a couple of thousand square feet of offices. But we're open to the public 9 to 6, 6 days a week. And our mission is multi-fold, but originally and still is the main focus is diversion of reusable materials from the landfill. But to that, we have there are substantial other benefits. One of them being those materials, we're just like a thrift store. We don't handle clothes and books and that sort of thing. We handle 2x4s, 2x6s, windows, doors, cabinetry, that sort of thing. And we're located in the hood up there, and that's our major customer base. It's people who are financially stricken and budget-minded families trying to do a little bit of remodel and bring their homes up, get the standard of living for themselves up, and still save money at the same time. We also train unemployed workers and employed workers literally around the country and from coast to coast. We've trained over 350 typically young adults, and got them into the construction, not only deconstruction end, but more importantly, so that they can move up into higher paying jobs within all the construction trades. Recently, we have gotten ourselves involved in the commercial sector in the last 3 years. And we now have such clients under our belt as Google, Genentech, the city of San Francisco, UC San Francisco, Sobrato, down here in the Silicon Valley area. So we've got several contractors or contracts, I should say, already underway and working on. And of course, we've done a substantial amount of work with the federal government, both the Department of Defense as well as the U.S. Forest Service, salvaging materials from various projects which they have. As a nonprofit organization, one of the true benefits, particularly residential clients, is that those materials which we receive at our store are tax deductible donations, just like giving clothes or books to Goodwill. It's giving boards and fixtures and that sort of thing to us. In those 30 some odd years, we've done over $250 million worth of tax deductible donations for donors throughout the country. It is a substantial amount of money. Which is probably the primary benefit and the only reason that we're around. Had there not been a tax deductible donation to our business, it would probably be worth about 10% of what we are today. But it is quite an incentive, and it is because there are two problems with deconstruction. Number one, it takes longer. Number two, it costs more. How much more? Typically, the easiest number is just double your demolition bid. You'll come up with something close to what a deconstruction. So it is a substantial cost. But I have never seen the time when that delta between the two has at least been equalized, or it's been much greater than actually put money in the owners. I've never seen it coming. The other benefit is, particularly here in cities like Los Altos, is you can pull demolition permits before the building permit is approved. Many locations you can't do that. So now the time element can be removed, because while the plans are going through plan check, zoning, what have you, the building can be deconstructed. It doesn't take that much longer. My estimate is, and if Hunter wants to address that when he speaks, that's fine, but it's about 10 to 1. If an excavator can remove that 1,000, 1,500 square foot house in 2 days, we'll probably take 20. So those are about the rough numbers. It all depends upon a whole lot of other things about the site. We have assisted many cities. Right now, I'm working with the city of Dallas on instituting a deconstruction ordinance for their city. We were working with the city of Palo Alto and helping them with their organization. Their main concern was if they do deconstruction and have a deconstruction ordinances, where do all the materials go? We invited them up to show our warehouse, and that is, we can absorb it. We can move the materials. Our retail sales are over $2 million. We can, and that's at literally cents on the dollars for for our materials. There is a lot of room for us to absorb materials, and we have a turnover in our retail store of about 2 times a year. Not what Costco would have, but it still isn't bad for the kind of business that we're in. So I'm here today to say, one of the things I think we ought to look at, especially in cities that have a predominant neighborhood of single-family dwellings, is to promote the deconstruction process and help the city keep materials out of the landfill. Or we are working with the city of San Francisco and the city of Oakland, but both of those are on a commercial basis because we do, as I mentioned earlier, we do commercial. Before I leave, or before you leave, or you kick me out, I've got packages here, which is exactly what we would give the donor of a residence when we first meet with them. And if you want to see the kind of materials and what we state and what we give them, these certainly are available to you. And certainly I would welcome if you one of those. Then here's just a brief discussion on our commercial. This is residential, this is commercial. Our training is substantial. We started originally about 15 years ago training the California Conservation Corps, which you probably know is a department within the state, reports directly to the governor. And their responsibility was manning fire roads and fire trails in the various state-owned parks. But there were also some buildings that they were repairing and then the state cleaning up and fixing things. But then the state asked them to start taking buildings down. So the buildings were no longer useful or at all. They're just too old to salvage or save. So we did the training of the California Conservation Corps back in 2007 and 2008. And this is that training manual. It is the only one in the country which we actually certify our trainees coming out of it. They read those who pass, and there's tests. One is objective, the other is not, is subjective. But once they pass with a passing grade of 70, then we give them a certificate. And those people we're up right now to about a 65% employment. But some of these are so old that I'm sure some of these people are probably retired. That's us. That's what we do, and we are here to help. We're helping other cities. We're certainly here to. My phone is always available, and I'm here to do whatever I can do to meet your environmental goals of diversion.
Thank you, Doug. I think what we'll do is we'll just go all around and then we'll do clarifying questions. Maybe you can tell us through your experience working with deconstruction, especially in the city of Palo Alto.
Sure.
And some data if you have any to share.
Yes.
Anecdotally,
So I
whatever.
wasn't able to get a lot of printouts. I'll just pass this
Okay.
along and then.
We'll share with you.
What Ted said all makes sense. Year from now, the ordinance passes and you go to the homeowner. The first thing the homeowner is gonna ask is, what's in it for me? Right? Why should I pay more? Short answer to that is, like he said, he got $255 million worth of credit. So just to put that in perspective, we just finished a house in African. It's a bigger house, but the owner got almost $300,000 of tax credit from that house. And it's typical for a smaller house to have somewhere between $25,000 of tax information that they can straight away write off on the tax. So it is for everybody. So financially it does make sense. So what you have in front of you are the dump receipts. So what happens in the process is once you guys pass the ordinance and permits are issued, somebody like myself, we would go in and we would deconstruct the house instead of, like you said, take a machine and take the whole thing down in 2 days. So this was a house that we did early last year in Palo Alto, about 1,100 square feet. And I put some numbers on the top right for you guys to look at. So out of 1,100 square feet house, we removed about 16 tons of debris that was source separated. What that means is we remove each finish of the material from the house by itself. It's not, nothing is lumped in together. So the roofing shingles, if you see the tar and gravel roofing, that was its own load. then the drywall becomes its own separate load. When you go to the recycle facility, it is recycled 100% versus if you take a machine, it might be 50% or 60% on the recycle that the other portion goes to, landfill. Things like that. So if you just go through it, you can see the different type of material that we got. It's sheet rock, it's basically drywall, miscellaneous debris, mixed debris. These are all with higher recycle rates, 82% to you get something like drywall, it's in the 90% range that it gets reused and comes right back into the life cycle. So we save a ton of resources and we can reuse that because we are doing the construction, not demolition. So, and then for this house, like you were saying, it took a crew of 6 guys, about 3 plus minus weeks to reconstruct the whole house down to the concrete foundation. And then concrete again. But concrete, you need to have obviously the machine. So, but again, concrete is also recyclable 100% depending on what it has in it. So overall, I would say it definitely makes sense. So, and then the second, if you look at the second one, that is 10 tons of items that went to TRP. It was doors, windows, cabinets, appliances, actual wood framing. All of those things go to his yard, and people, like you said, who are not that well enough, or even people who want to reuse and want to do something right, want to go green, they can reuse all these things. So you can imagine out of a 1,100 square feet house, 10 tons is something that we can reuse. It could have been here, it could be a table, it could be that door, it could be the lights, fans, whatever you can think of. Anything that is in your house right now, it can be saved. It doesn't have to go to the landfill. So that's what deconstruction gives you.
Thank you. And then I will share my story. We moved to Los Altos in 2012, and our house was pretty nice. We just needed to, add a little bit, and then eventually, by the time we were done with the planning permit, it turned out we had to demo the house. So a friend of ours had actually done demolition. We talked about the cracks. At that point, that was the main thing. So we ended up doing a deconstruction of our house, and my husband was smart enough to put a time-lapse camera in the back. So I'll share with you what it looked like. We have one in the front too, but that somehow didn't work. So hopefully we can get this video going. It's not that long. There you go. Yeah, so that's day one. They're taking down the shingles, they're collecting it, and they're taking down roofing material. So day one. So just while that's going, so we don't have to just stare at that the whole time. So we did have to do, I mean, it says so many days, but this is the day of, the structure. Before that, we did have to do an asbestos analysis, and there was asbestos. So the deconstruction company, there's somebody else came in and did the abatement for that. And then they came in and took all the appliances. So there was a whole different list of appliances. That took about, the asbestos abatement took about a week, I think. And then the interior took about a week or so. And then this is the exterior. I think we are in day 3. And they're putting everything in nice, neat piles. It was just fascinating to watch. Because we'd lived here for 1.5 years, and we really, we didn't want to have everything just go to the landfill. So at that time, Habitat for Humanity was taking donations. So the deconstructor we used actually donated everything to them. And let's see, we should be almost done. If you want, we can play. Left. You can skip forward to somewhere there. Yeah. Clearing everything. You can skip forward a little bit more if you want. And then it's gone. This last few bits of bricks. And then this is an inventory of everything that they salvaged. And all the lumber and masonry that was salvaged, and we were able to make a significant donation. And then eventually we did, and then there was a significant amount of tonnage that was reused. And that's different from being, you know, recycled or sent to the landfill. That much just went hopefully to people's homes or projects, etc. And that felt really good. So that's my story. Thank you. And for the record, this is 2014, so some of the numbers may be different now. I'm sure it can cost a little bit more. Later on, I'll have some details on the bid of, you know, what the difference cost was. But yeah, so that's my story. So with that, I guess we can take clarifying questions.
You mentioned 80 to 90% for certain materials be salvaged, some 100%. Are there any popular building materials that you run into that are issues where there's no way to salvage it? Auto building? Question for you.
So, I mean, tiles, countertops, things like that, it's just debris, because we can't salvage, we cannot take out pieces. Pavers, we can, and they're sensitive pavers, so depending on how they're applied in the house, we can try and take out in full pieces, but
One of the problems in today's construction, and we just ran into this 2 years ago down in Manhattan Beach. 6,000 square foot house, 4 different kinds of wood flooring. One was maple, one was oak, one was walnut, and the other was cherry. Somebody went crazy with wood floors. Every one of those floors was glued down. There was no way to save any of it. So one of the problems we run into with new construction, because they don't want it to squeak. Of course, that's what we used paper for years ago. We put it between the underlayment and the finished floor. We put paper, you know, paper, basically tar paper. And that kept it from squeaking, but we don't use that for some reason. So there are some things. Termites are another. We had a substantial setback on a project we did in Menlo Park years ago, where the owner was a little upset because what the appraisers do in the beginning, the appraisers that we had selected and that we worked with, there's 4 of them around the country, is we send them a package of photographs and a written report, about 5 pages, of what we believe should be salvaged. And we send it to the appraisers. The appraisers respond back to the owner at no cost to the owner, giving an estimate of what the value could be. Pick 2 numbers, 50 to 60,000, whatever those are, but they give a range. On this particular one, the range was right at the bottom of the barrel, but it was still within the range, and the owner was a little upset, and rightly so. What fortunately our manager had done is take photographs of the termite lumber. And then I also showed him that our disposal receipts were higher than they should have been, because it was stuff that we had to dispose of, didn't we? So he understood. It just, that happens.
Questions about, asbestos. When you deconstruct, I think those people will need to be trained, because these are environmental hazardous. And also neighbor needs to be aware that, there's gonna be this construction going on, and there's this kind of very sensitive material that could be, go through the air, they travels, right? So do you forewarn the neighbors about, these, because older home, I think, that are built in the 40s, 50s, even 60s, right? They use asbestos as insulation material.
Anything before 78, 79,
Mhm.
it most often than not, it will have some trace materials, which means it has to be abated. So
Yeah,
then you have to call in a special abatement certified company. And they come in with all their, signs and everything, there's special suits.
right.
And then they do the abatement. Once they're done, then there's a 10-day waiting period to make sure the air around is clear for anybody else to go,
Yeah.
breathe in and stuff like that. And once that is done, then we can go in. So the two-stage process. One is where we go in first and we remove items that are touching, let's say there is the drywall is hot, it has asbestos in it.
Mhm.
So anything that is touching the drywall, we'll go in there and we'll try to take it out first. All the trim, any cabinets that are hung on the wall, stuff like that, we will take out. Then we go away. Then the abatement company comes in, they will do their thing. And after the air is cleared in 10 days, then we go back again. Then we deconstruct the house.
Yeah, I have a question. So when somebody does demolition,
Mhm.
Is there a check for asbestos?
It's required. It's a
Okay,
federal
so and then they
requirement.
would do the same process.
Correct.
They would take out
In
everything.
that case, yeah,
With-
they would still have to do the abatement first and then you take it down with the machine.
With one exception. When we ran into this, and it happens all the time, but I was in a training program in Menlo Park 3 years ago. We were taking down an old home, and it had already been abated. But what the abatement inspector did not check was what was under the floor in an add-on room. And it was 9x9 tile, which is almost always asbestos. And it wasn't there. We also found the asbestos flue transite from the furnace up through the woodwork, because it's transite, which is asbestos. It doesn't allow the heat to get into the framing material. So it's a very good insulator. But that was also in the house. If that building had been demolished, that would have gone into the air because they wouldn't know. So the beauty of deconstruction is when his guys run into, oh my God, look what we've got, look what we found, they immediately stop. Call the abatement guy and back off the job and let them finish.
Just to clarify, so it sounds like there's two sources of value to the homeowner. One is just the raw material that's recycled at the dump, I guess. Is that right? So, and the other is materials that are actually sold or brought back to your company that you reuse or resell to other people, and that's a tax deduction.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned an ordinance needs to be passed to allow this. Is that what I heard? No. Okay. This is permitted in Los Altos already. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then it sounded like you got $130,000 tax deduction. What was the main value there, just out of curiosity?
There were a lot of fixtures, et cetera, and then there was a lot of lumber, et cetera. I mean, we can look at the details, you would know more, what typically has.
Yeah, in our history, what we've checked is, first of all, the donation value, the IRS probably wouldn't like me to say this. The donation value we have found on a home that's been lived in, could be older, it has been upgraded, is running about $45 a square foot. It could be higher if it's been substantially upgraded. It could be even higher if that building was built a long time ago and it's old growth lumber.
Do you know what is a demolition cost per square foot roughly? Just a straight demolition.
About what? What did you say?
$8 a square foot with the machine. I mean, again, that does not include the concrete, so you add that up.
Sorry, I
So
didn't hear
you're-
that. Could you say that louder?
Somewhere between $5 and $10 a square foot on
For
demolition.
demolition, so you're about $40 positive per square foot if you come from a tax deduction standpoint.
When did you bracket?
No, yeah, no, I know, yeah.
Anybody living in Los Altos is in a reasonable enough bracket. pardon me.
Yeah, maybe.
So anyway, what we have also found in doing an analysis on materials and so forth and what's valuable is again, in that same house that I mentioned, it's been upgraded and it's been lived in, it's not a crack or a rental house. Half the value is in the lumber package. Rafters, joists, floor joists, ceiling joists, that sort of thing. The other half the value is in everything else. Doors, windows, cabinets. And the interesting thing, if you're doing real environmental dive into it, the lumber has the least amount of embodied energy compared to windows, doors, cabinets, appliances. So from an environmental standpoint and reducing energy costs, the interior of the house is probably has more of a benefit.
Commissioner Nee has a question.
Yeah, I kind of, sorry, first of all, in advance because the acoustics aren't great. So I'm not sure I picked up everything you said. So if I ask some redundant questions, please forgive me. I kind of had a follow-up for Commissioner Hecht. So one thing I still don't get is how much more expensive is deconstruction than demolition? Like taking whatever averages like how much more is the actual more expensive is the process? And then my second question was, what happens when you have donated materials that you can't reuse? So what actually happens to them? I assume they get discarded, but if you could kind of play through that journey, that would be helpful.
Deconstruction, depending on who is doing it, because there is a big variation on how someone might approach the deconstruction process, right? I might go in and save 50% of the lumber versus somebody like Ted who really wants to do the right thing. He will spend the time and he'll try and salvage and save 80% of the lumber. So that's where you see the variation in the square foot price. But if you take, I would say maybe $25 to $30 a square foot just to take the house down. And again, it also depends on how the house is built. And in Palo Alto, what we have seen is these are mostly the old Eichler style houses. So I'm giving you the pricing based off of that kind of a house that's built. But if it's a bigger house and it has more lumber and things like that, you have to spend more time. So then that dollar per square foot price goes higher. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then on the question about what happens with material that you can't use.
We do break things in the warehouse accidentally. We'll back a forklift in, we'll drop a window, that sort of thing. We also get some materials that are on a truck that we don't realize that were already damaged. But the bottom line is we do not throw anything away. I probably have windows in our inventory back from 1993 when we started. But what we do is we just keep discounting the price and to the extent that we will actually give the materials away. And we'll find other organizations, nonprofit organizations that could use the materials.
And then the lumber, for example, the lumber that we save that goes to Ted's place versus the lumber that if it's like a cluster of 2x4 framing that is together, it's really hard to separate them like time-wise, and that may not make sense financially. But when that goes to the landfill, they convert it into mulch. So it's 100% recyclable. So it comes back in the system.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm Les Polchak. I live on Dow Drive, La Delta. So question for the reuse people. is there any kind of gotchas in this tax deduction? I know you're not a tax thing, but somebody needs to answer this definitively if we're gonna like require this as a city. Is there any gotchas, like can a developer tear down the house and get a tax deduction? Can someone who doesn't live in the house, you know, are there any gotchas, or is essentially anyone able, that's my basic question.
Yeah, no, it's the homeowner.
So,
If you're a developer and you come in and you take either that house or the 3 houses around it
Right.
down, you probably, there may be some ability for you to take that,
right,
but it is going to affect then your total cost, because of that value will be reduced.
right. So,
But it's primarily for the homeowner.
if developers aren't eligible, so you're gonna get a lot of pushback. I know there's at least, I'm not, you know, one of them, but there's at least 2 pretty active developers in Los Altos. And if you're gonna increase their cost by tens of thousands of dollars, you're gonna get some serious pushback when this goes to council. So that's a concern. But it's basically any homeowner. They don't, like, if someone moves from Massachusetts, never lived in the house, they would be eligible.
That is correct.
They would be eligible.
If they want it, yeah.
Okay. So like I'm a potential customer, so I have some more detailed questions about your process, but I won't waste time here. Also sort of a competitor because I'm on the board of Habitat for Humanity. And as you know, we have 3 restores, right? Oakland, Concord, and San Jose. Habitat for Humanity, East Bay, Silicon Valley. Where the commissioner donated, they closed their restore, so they could no longer take that, for example. So, you know, probably be you guys. And I actually looked through your inventory online, and it kind of looks like stuff that sells for us, doors, and you know, it's like it's the same kind of stuff. So, I think it's great. I mean, I will say that that's if developers aren't eligible, that's going to be a stumbling block if it's increasing people's costs. I mean, I think this is great. I think it's the right thing to do. But, you know, just going to throw that out there to the commission, you know, when if this goes to the council, that's going to be a stumbling block. I have a lot of other questions, but I don't want to waste everybody's time. What's that?
We can do it later. I can give you my card.
That's cool.
Any other questions?
Oh, I have one. Hi, I'm Lauren. I also live in Los Altos, just on Valencia Drive. And I guess I just had one question, and I know at least on the streets around the high school, there's a lot of construction going around and a lot of people building new homes. But for deconstruction, is it maybe less noisy or less intrusive to like the other homes around compared to like tearing down a house?
I would say it's more safer because there are not big machines around. Everything is done with hand and hand tools. And you have one truck or one debris dumpster on site. So that way, if it's near a school, it's perfectly safe. It's actually more safer.
Certainly less dust.
Yeah.
I have a question. So did you say there was one dumpster? And I guess my question is more around, because I look at everything revolving emissions as a total. So, is there more or less or the same amount of trips that are being, that are occurring versus demolition? Or is it the same?
I mean, the tonnage that's going out is the same. So depending on the size, like what we do, we have our own truck. So we have a truck on site every day, first thing in the morning at 8. End of the day, whatever is demolished or deconstructed, all the debris goes into the truck, and then the truck goes offsite. The next day, it goes to Zanka Recycling. It dumps everything that's in that, then it comes back to the site. So it's always a revolving thing. Versus if it's a dumpster, depending on the size of the dumpster, 10 yards or 40 yards, then that has to be coordinated with the dumpster company, the rental company. There are some cities that are not getting the word, but you can only use X company to rent the dumpster. That, but if it's personal, like somebody has their own trucks, then they don't need to use the dumpster.
So it can be more or less
The number of
trips.
trips.
It's dependent. Is that the answer?
Are you asking about college, how much,
Yeah, like vehicle trips back and forth.
With emission, yes, that would be more. Again, it depends on how much material is in that truck for that day. But if it's a truck, then the truck will come in and then go in from that aspect, there'll be more emissions compared to the dumpster.
there is no discussion on this, right? So I guess if anyone has any more questions. Go ahead and ask, otherwise we'll thank speakers and move on with the agenda. Thank you so much. You're welcome to stay. And watch the rest of the fun. Or your, So next item is.
I think for the purposes of the meeting, if you guys want to stay, you're more than welcome to sit in the
Okay.
chair.
Like copy of the material.
Yeah, certainly. You kind of, three of you over there. And there's a couple of you there. Couple of those.
Anybody in the back?
And if you want, I only brought 2 copies, but there's what we require on how materials are supposed to be delivered.
Okay, thank you.
So anybody in the audience wants one of these?
Trying to stay off.
Hello.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll be ready for a couple months, so I'm gonna call in a couple months.
Yeah, here, let me give you a card.
We will move on. Yes. So meeting minutes.
No.
Anybody have a motion?
Motion to approve. As
I'll second that.
Okay, we take individual votes since we have one person virtual. So Commissioner Nee,
Yeah, in favor.
Commissioner Hecht.
Yep.
Commissioner Liu. Yes. Vice Chair Van Raes. Chair Humayun.
Yes.
And Commissioner Whedon.
yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes are passed.
Then we move on to discussion items and hot on the heels of deconstruction, we have more deconstruction. So in addition to my own experience, I just did a little bit of research in the last couple weeks on deconstruction, and I think Tanya, do you have the brief couple slides that I put together? Yeah. Start ahead. Based on my research, there's quite a few cities across the country that have done that have implemented a deconstruction ordinance. But let's go on. This is just, we've heard this, so we've seen it. It's just kind of a visual of what happens, and I've seen the left-hand side, and and then okay, what is it? That's okay. Yeah, so just couple examples. I mean, we talked a little bit about costs, and these are the last one is just a sample table that I found at the website that listed over there of an example difference between deconstruction
Sorry, I think you might have muted yourself.
Speak to it. Yeah, so that's kind of the quote I got, and actually one of the quotes, I had was from, the reuse people. And I think we went with somebody who had, we had, had a referral from. So the quote for demolition was a little over 21. The quote for deconstruction, again, this is 11 years ago, so it was about $30,500. And the time they said would be 5 to 7 days for demolition and 10 to 12 days for deconstruction. So not the 1:10, but again, it's a while ago, I don't know what the details and the laws are, and the size of the house. It took about that much time. The building took about 4 days, 4 to 5 days to come down completely, and then the interior after the asbestos was removed, took 1 to 2 weeks, and they took out every light fixture, all the appliances, all that stuff, and then that was inventoried. And then we got, so there were 140 fixtures in the list, and the total donation value was 132,000. Needless to say, we came out ahead in terms of our cost. And then it was about 9 tons of just the masonry and lumber that was sent to reuse. And it's not recycled, sent to reuse, to Habitat for Humanity. So that felt really good. I don't know the weight of all the other fixtures, etc. So that's, and it felt good to keep that much material out of landfill, or even if it was recycled, to be directly used in that kind of energy. So that's kind of the cost comparisons that I've, just for for reference. Of course, today's costs and the cost here, these folks would have a better idea, so we'll provide their numbers. Next page. Yeah. So just some random facts. 600 million tons of waste are generated by construction activities annually. Several cities, and that's a short list of some of the major ones, have in place deconstruction ordinances, and they vary in terms of whether they apply to new construction only or to major remodels, etc. Most Bay Area cities do the 65% landfill diversion that's required by Calgary, and Los Altos is among them. Some cities allow a lesser percentage for certain projects, and then there's always for certain projects, and then there is exceptions if there is a good cause for things not to be able to be delivered at that amount. Most cities use, I have looked into it, a system for managing how much is demolished, and they log that. Palo Alto is the closest city that has a deconstruction ordinance. It only applies to new construction, and they partnered with the reuse people to put together the ordinance and do the initial appraisal, and that they're a nonprofit, so I don't know how that works, but that's who Palo Alto is using. Several other cities are working on looking at the construction ordinances. Palo Alto's went into effect in 2020. It's okay. No, I mean, I'll share with you the material, proper slide then what I was doing. So this is an example. Was there another page with the residential data? Oh, there's a page. Anyway, so let me read that off. I may. So they have on their if you search Palo Alto deconstruction updates every year, they get a memo to council or where they say, okay, how much should be diverted with deconstruction, what's the value and all that stuff. So there was number for residential, which looked, I mean, a high percentage of the material was diverted from landfill, and I think if it was the order of 80 to 90% during with deconstruction, which is all they allow. And then they also did a deconstruction project for a commercial building. This is a pilot, so they have the details on that, and they talked about how much. Again, 3% of the material was landfill. Obviously, it costs more, takes a little bit longer, but a lot of the material is reused, salvaged, recycled, and kept away from landfills. So that's Palo Alto's experience. And just my recommendations as of now, I can continue doing some research on and get more guidance. I left a voicemail with the person who manages the deconstruction Palo Alto. I'll get a chance to chat with them and get some more information on how their ordinance, how it was accepted, and how it's been going. And then if appropriate, and we're not, well, we could work with the review to have a model ordinance, and they already have one that on their website, which is like a standard, everything included ordinance. So we could potentially just have them look at it and just put a very draft model ordinance for the city as it would apply. Again, only if appropriate, if the commission thinks that might be appropriate. And then in next month or the month after, I want to present whatever is a final recommendation. This is an intermediate report. And then if the commission agrees, we can share that to council. And then we also had Carla put in planning for deconstruction as a part of the planning process. We can discuss then whether that should be something we work on this year or we plan for next year, or when, put in a future work plan. So that's kind of where I am. Any clarifying questions?
Can you, I had a question, I forgot it. I apologize.
Same line.
If you have one, maybe send it to Tanya.
You said I think it's Palo Alto's only applies to new construction. Wouldn't it always apply to old construction? What is the
Oh, new construction meaning a complete rebuild.
Okay, so
As opposed to a remodel?
A complete, a take down, tear down and rebuild as opposed to a remodel.
My question probably is more in the discussion is that how many this kind of house got towed down in our city? And you just mentioned the Calgary, we are in the Calgary. So our city is already abiding that 65% at least of the material needs to be diverted. So is this equivalent saying that at least we are already reuse 65% of the material from either demolition or deconstruct of the older houses? Can we say that?
So 65% requirement is for diversion from landfill.
Doesn't mean it's reused.
It's not necessarily reuse. It could be recycle. It would be chipping the wood for mulch. And I think clarifying questions maybe. Yeah.
Because
are we allowed to have discussion points or?
We're just clarifying questions.
Just clarify,
and
there's
we'll
another public comment, so
Okay.
just.
Any other clarifying questions? Public comment?
Are your slides gonna be available on the website? Because problem I always have with presentations, I always want to read them.
Yes, and I apologize.
Will they be on the commission's page? Would be nice.
We don't usually post
The
slides,
video-
but the video
The
will be up.
video will be there and
Yeah, I know.
get the
that
cutoff
one,
version
the
of the
whole
slides.
video, so you
Yeah.
But I think
I can, if
Maybe
you
a
can connect and I can send
if
it
you
to you.
email
yeah.
Tanya, she can send it,
Okay.
send you, and I'll have a better version. What I had. And then the video from the board, which I like. Yeah, so any other comments from the public? Okay, we can move into discussion.
I guess one thing to think about, one thing to potentially think about is, instead of making it a requirement, I mean, again, this might be too far in the future depending on what research you do, but is kind of like we've talked about for electrification, reducing upfront fees or giving variances, something like that, if you do deconstruction.
Yeah.
Just so it's more voluntary, but strong incentive to do it.
Yeah, so that's, I think that's in the work plan, it's
Okay.
incentivize or require.
Yeah.
Promote, yeah, no, it's good, because I think it's, the city is going towards that general direction, doing the incentives first, and I'm sure there's ways the city can help militarily in other ways.
Do we have statistic on percentage houses that is deconstructed versus demolished in our city? I feel like, do we have that?
I'm sure there's a record. We'll have to figure out if there's a way to pull it out.
Yeah, that would be something we have to ask the building official.
I feel like people is gonna ask first is that, do we have a problem here? Do we really need an ordinance to enforce this? Or people is already pretty much aware, we can educate about what we used to do or things like that. I feel Palo Alto has a very different scenario from Los Altos. Just take example of this, Palo Alto has, I would say, south side of the town, over 3/4 of the houses are older. Insulation is in general not as good. And I think, when people they buy in, they want to own a project also, but they might not like the material that's in Microsoft. They want to a brand new home. But we don't have that problem here.
I don't, well, we do have most of the homes that are 1960s or older are getting rebuilt on our street out of, I don't know, we should get the statistics.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there is
I think we should.
an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of things that we're seeing in our city?
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like, Tom, I have this kind of developed this. I feel like we're being asked to do something and 80% of council feel there's no need. And
Yeah.
I feel that's like a number one question we need to ask ourselves is that before we delve a lot of time and resources there.
I just wanted to clarify, the question is, the data we want to get
What
is,
is the statistic that we're keeping track of? Percentage of houses that are being deconstructed versus demolished. I just
so I
wanna
can say
see
for
the
sure that
distribution.
we don't keep track of that. But we'd have to dig through whatever, I don't know how to look at the permits.
So
Yeah, demolition
But-
permits will
New
have
house can
probably,
permit, yeah.
sorry.
Well, since I haven't applied for a permit with new houses, when you do that, do you have to fill out what did you do with your old house?
I will have to check with our
What
permits,
is-
but we
Yeah,
can
this
also
would be-
just ask the building department. And
Yeah,
see
they
what they
don't
know.
look at it as like deconstruction versus demolition. They look at it as the Calgreen 65%. So we'd have to dig through the information, but yeah, I think we need to talk to the building official.
I think the thing that we've heard from the building official before is that they keep track of a couple of specific items for the permitting process. And if you're asking a question that they're not tracking, then they have to go through it permit by permit. So you'd have to specify a time, say like the last 12 months, and then they would plow through the permits for the last 12 months and look for that item for you.
Yeah, there's no
Which is
checkbox
a
that says
significant ask of
deconstruction.
staff time.
They love to do.
Yeah. So what maybe, we can look to see what data we have from the also, given there may be different conditions. Which is why I think we need to do a little bit more research for the understanding. But it's one of the actions in the cap. Which are deconstruction as opposed to demolition. And it goes with reduce waste as well as potentially reuse, which is lower cost eventually globally for products if they can be reused. So the circular economy, there you go. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know the answer in terms of what what the level of the problem is. Most people doing deconstruction? I don't think so, because Gary was telling me, Gary hadn't. Is here, I don't know if he can speak. He was telling me about two houses that are being deconstructed / one is across each other that are, they're being taken out. One is deconstructed and one is being demoed. So that might be an interesting, just really, road trip for me. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel, having gone through the process, that it's a no-brainer. But of course, one of the questions is if contractors are not allowed to avail the tax credit, which maybe that's a question to ask also, or a lawyer. That might be an issue because that's something that they turn around. But if they're required to do it, then how does the city incentivize them to do it as adding on time and money to it? So yeah, lots of questions to ask, and I haven't had a chance to do more research. Just wanted us to get initial understanding of what the process is like and some of the options.
Yep, my head went in the same direction, Rashina. It's in the case where, because it seems like this is the attractiveness of this from a financial perspective is contingent on the tax credit. So what happens when the tax credit like either isn't valid or doesn't get passed on to the person that's going to be eventually living in the house, whether they're renting or buying it from a developer? How does that affect the financial comparison that you're making? So that was the only thing I think that, because otherwise I'm with Tom, it's more about education and incentivization, because for many people in Los Altos, I think this would be quite compelling if they knew about it.
Yeah. Next steps, is there guidance? Should I continue with my research?
I think it's very interesting. Yeah.
And maybe come back next month or the month after with
Yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. Yeah, I think we should keep looking at it. I think it's again, I think one of the key questions is the tax credit and whether it is excluded from developers or not. Yeah.
I was just gonna add if there's any research on attitudes about this, if that's something that we're able to share, whether no matter not the Bay Area, might be general US, that anything that someone might have looked into could it be helpful in terms of direction. And then I meant to ask them as well in terms of how do people generally hear about this to try to figure out that education gap if that is the direction we end up going.
The question I'd asked Uncle when I talked to him initially is that, has he done any projects in Los Altos? And he said no, because Los Altos does not have an ordinance. All his projects in the peninsula have been in Palo Alto because they have an ordinance. So I don't know if that answers your question. So so that's one. I guess it goes back to the other question that Tom and Colin were asking. But
if they have incentives, I guess, do they ever know if it worked with incentives? Probably not, right?
Yeah, we'll have to ask.
Yeah.
They did do a significant period of outreach and letting people know that this is coming, etc. I have seen a lot of organizations that I researched that promote it, and then there's a lot of prominent cities that are making ordinances. I don't know until we place to ask, and then if needed, we could. We don't do surveys anymore, but we could do an information session and then see what the interest is. Okay.
So we said that we were talking about, you know, how to make sure we understand what the next steps are in action items. So summarizing that, the commission is in agreement to continue research on deconstruction. And there was a comment on researching like behaviors and general interest from
Yeah.
attitudes from the public. And it sounds like we don't necessarily know if it's gonna be a ordinance or incentive, and that's gonna be figured out a little more down the road.
So I'm wondering if we could have a booth at the, whatever we're calling it, Living Electric Fair, sorry. That has just some information on it and see if people sign up. Yeah. On an interest list.
Want to move on to the next?
Yeah.
That would go into that could be in the discussion for the
Yeah.
Living Electric Fair.
Okay, so yeah, so that's kind of where we are, and I'll do some more research and bring some more. Specific data discussions. I've seen the numbers and the presentations been made, and they're very remarkable in percentage that really stepped out of landfill. We don't know what percentage is and how easy it is for them. Okay, moving on, next discussion item. Which is Living Electric event. Mr. Landry.
Yeah, so it's coming up on May 4th, but I'm just gonna pull up the website as a point of reference for this event. I mentioned the zones last time, and then one thing I don't think I clarified for the EV zone, the EVs that are invited are specifically meant to display the ability to have power go both ways. So there's going to be at least one car powering a video demonstration for one vendor, and another case powering an electric fireplace. And there's some others as well, but I wanted to make that point that the selection is intentionally to show that functionality. Part of the idea being that, you know, a somewhat power backup in the event of a power outage, for example. Right, so here's the website, and that describes part of the electric avenue zone. Micromobility, the exact vendors are still to be determined, but they're certainly trying to get scooters and one wheels. And we know Bicycle Outfitter would be another one there. We have Cal Water going to do riding refill water stations. And then what else is there to mention here? So yeah, the fun zone, a couple things I can highlight. Kids craft station will be run by an art teacher. There's going to be an upcycling activity. I believe that's the same one as what's called T-shirts to tote bags. And then we have a couple of musical performances in that area from Andy Z and the Song Gardeners. So that is certainly a highlight there. You see all the partners there. I need to get scroll down for a second, then we'll go back up again. Event sponsors, and then here's a list of confirmed exhibitors right now. Curious, some of those you had last year, some in here. Yeah. But
okay, yes. So Silicon Valley Clean Energy, yeah.
Yeah, right. The Dream Home. I mentioned last time the Dream Home will be there. And then certainly looking for volunteers still for the event. And then the big one to discuss is the zero waste zone because our organizers reached out to Anya to have booths. So currently there's no environmental commission booth, but Anya is going to be there talking about the single use ordinance. So Anya, do you want to talk at all about?
Yeah, I think I'm going to be there to be representative of the city, and I can talk about any topics, but I was specifically asked to be in the zero waste zone to talk about the foodware ordinance.
So in the discussion, what I would like to figure out as if you need any support, if you would like commissioners to be there to fill in for certain times, and then what the capacity might be to add other topics such as maybe deconstruction. Do that. I think that's our main discussion. Any clarifying questions?
Okay. Clarifying questions? Any comments from the public?
I think it was already answered. I was just gonna say, I hope you show electric fireplaces because I like them. It surprised me how cool they actually are for a focal point.
Yeah,
I mean, heat pumps for space and water heating and induction, that already sells itself, but fireplaces are cool.
One question is copper, the induction hooked up range that was there last time gonna be there?
I believe they are.
Yeah, I've seen that
May not be.
last year.
Yeah. Right.
That's that answers speaks to a lot of concerns people have about induction cooktops.
Cool.
Question, so.
Yeah.
First of all, I guess, Tanya, do you want help?
Yeah.
Do you need help and do you want
I
it?
guess I was wondering if we wanted to have a separate booth, like separate booths or separate tables and so there's 3 different sections. We could have 3 different commissioners in the section or something like that.
So I can also say that I believe Complete Streets will have representation there as well. In the Electric Avenue or Micromobility, I can't recall which one. So we will already have two sort of see represented in that way, but
So I like the idea with the zero waste for there to be whatever we're doing on zero waste, if it's plastic, plastic ban, if it's, we're talking about the versus the compostable plastic bags for produce. And then also deconstruction or any other things, so that could go in zero waste. There's a general table that reducing waste. And then yes, micromobility, we could talk about, the trees would be there, and then if we have, since we have a couple items on our board plan around that as well, we can speak to it or ask questions or have people sign up for interest lists. Those are of course what up to avenues.
yeah.
Talk about the electrification, assuming, do we have a vendor hired for the electrification partner? Yeah, generally we could get information there. So it makes sense to maybe have the legals, I'd be on the fun zone booth.
I don't think there's gonna be those type of booths at the fun zone. That's really just the activity. Yeah. So, I certainly the zones are restricted a bit. I can, talk to them. I think they're still trying to figure out the exact shuffling of where booths will be. So, we could try to be in sort of border zone.
Sure.
I-
Like an area.
That's what I was gonna suggest with mobility, I think Complete Streets are probably be ones that's gonna be in their wheelhouse and, if the environmental commissioner wants to nose up with them and provide additional support to them rather than, more tables and resources.
Yeah, no, I don't
Makes
mean to
sense.
have additional tables, one table in each section from the city /
We have an effort in building electrification, so I don't know if that warrants something, if they're that far apart that we need presence in both areas, or if presence would be appropriate in both areas. That would be my question.
Yeah, and I think, for me, like having oversight on a lot of these topics, it's if there's a general area that might make more sense, which I've mentioned to Emily. That could work too.
Or do we straddle the border?
Yeah.
They-
We just-
Right in the center.
Electric
Yeah.
Avenue and that zero waste, are they adjacent to each other?
I think that's likely how it would have to go. The only really neutral area right now would be an information booth. Otherwise, they really aren't. Meant to be separated so that if you're interested in this general topic, you can just go to that spot. But-
Zero waste is gonna be in State Street, right?
There will be 3 tables within State Street, but then I believe most of Zero Waste is right outside State Street Market. I believe. Maps, publicly visit map is still come, so.
By the way, this is amazing, so thank you.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's a big step up from what we've
Great
done.
that the city's doing this.
It's looking really good. It's impressive how many organizations have stepped up.
Yeah.
What's the other question? There was another question. As appropriate,
Well,
we can
Yeah,
volunteer now.
no, yeah. I guess we have to figure out a way for people to interface with Tanya so that, split up time so that they could support you or,
But what's the date of this again? Sorry.
May
May
4th.
4th.
Oh, so this, we have to figure it out right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't meet again, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we need to make some hard decisions.
So,
Well, it sounds like you need to go back to and ask if we can be in multiple places, right?
if we wanted another table, which I'm gonna say is very unlikely that we would get another table. But I think I can try to figure out location of that table, but I think best thing to do would be to figure out in an 11 to 3 span, what times would commissioners be able to support you so that you're not having to field all questions the whole time.
Do I suggest maybe Tanya could either send out an email with volunteer times and who wants to volunteer in which times? And then if there is an opportunity for a different table and we have enough volunteers, maybe that's something you can let us know.
I want to hear what you think.
Do we, I guess one question is, to figure out right now is, do you wanna do 1 hour blocks or more than that? Is everyone's schedule open
I'm
or?
sorry, I'm gonna be out of town.
Okay, so, I guess. If you, you can email me if you're interested and then I can just schedule, I'll be there the whole time, so. If you're, I guess you're interested, if you're interested, then, we can figure that out.
I'll be there for a couple hours.
That'll be there as well.
And I'll let you know, I may be gone that weekend, but if not, I will let you know. I will certainly stop by, and if I'm needed in the booth, happy to do that as well.
I should be able to volunteer most of the day, Tanya.
I think, yeah, that's great. I appreciate everyone. It would be just figuring out if someone could be like at the CSC table, if someone could be at the notification table or something like that. Like join someone or something like that. Yeah.
So some of that could just be day of coordination with me telling it's available, but.
Yeah, okay, so for the zero waste table, it sounds like we have enough people that it could be every hour.
You could send out, I think last year, there's a sign up sheet for all of us, and we just sign in, what time that we plan to be. I think it's a 1 hour kind of commitment.
So maybe Tanya, once there is more clarity on what's needed. Or, both ways, if we're interested and we have open time, just let Tanya know.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, if there is more need or if there is specific things, you can ask.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And is it fair to say if some commissioner wants to bring papers on a topic to show people such a deconstruction, they have the capacity to do that?
If they are, I think it depends on if they're vetted and like if they're coming from like reputable sources or they're just like information that people can find online or something like that.
So is there?
It's not something that we can. Um, a deadline for,
For when they should show you to make sure that the city is comfortable with that being shown at this booth, or is it just if the source is, .gov.org/.
yeah, I think
publisher?
as long as it's not something that someone's creating and just putting together and it's like
Yeah.
opinionated or something, it should be fine.
Okay,
And doesn't have like the city logo on it, or it's not from a specific company or consultant, or that's also something we want to be careful of.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't be, because as a city, we don't do specific consultants or we don't advertise specific people, so we'd have to be careful about that stuff. So I think, just running it by me, or if there's a concern in the editor, clarification you need, just let me know. But more general sources.
yeah.
Would it make sense that we send you the digital version of whatever's to be printed ahead of time? That's, I guess, your question about deadline.
Yeah,
For the record.
I think use your judgment on whether it's something that you think I would need to check, and then send it to me earlier if I need to
If
check.
we're
And
we're
then
not sure, we check with Tanya.
And then, and I'm more than happy to print them, so like it for printing,
Okay, anything else? Anything else?
Great, so it's awesome.
Okay, SB 1046 pre-checkout bags. Tanya.
Okay, so we left off in February, we discussed this a little bit and we left off on, can we get an official statement or what is officially happening, right? From MTWS or the landfill. So I don't know if everyone has been seeing the articles that's come out or in the MTWS newsletter where they explicitly said no bio bags in the compost bin. So that is where we're at with that. The MTWS will take them, but the landfill is not composting them. They're going to the landfill. And so if we see any clarifying questions.
My reading of the information is that Mission Trail Waste would prefer not to see them in the green bin because they muck up the handling of the green waste. So it's an education thing to people to begin with on that issue.
Another thing, it takes away whatever organic certification.
Any clarifying questions? Okay,
Any public comment?
So I was unaware that this was apparently passed into law in 2022 because I'm still seeing a lot of plastic bags. So related to this, if we're gonna educate, like I personally have purchased reusable produce bags and they're like a mesh and you can reuse them, they're washable. So if we're gonna do some education, I'd say, why don't we encourage, and I hate to say it, I've reused plastic bags that I had to get. Why don't we encourage reusable bags if we're gonna do some kind of education?
so it sounds like you want to lean towards education.
Well, when we last talked about the potential ordinance that was brought up, we were trying to bring the city into compliance with the state law. Is it necessary or not to have city ordinance to be in compliance with state law? And I think that the answer at that time was that the state law governs, so you don't necessarily need a city ordinance on it unless you want to do something different than what the state is requiring. So,
Something more than the state.
yeah, in other words, all of our grocers are gonna put the compostable plastic bags in their you know, get your produce in, because it's gonna be cheaper and easier than a paper bag. And then it's for the people that don't bring their own mesh or whatever, that they bag their own, so to speak, green beans or whatever it is. Yeah, it's a tough call, and you know, I think that my takeaway from this is, if we mandate that it has to be a paper bag, if the stores can provide it, and we try and get an ordinance that in Los Altos, you got to use a 50% recycled material paper bag if you're going to supply one as a grocery store or something like that. Being what we went through last night for something, you know, it's that a fight we want to take on?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. I think, you know, there is a state ordinance, but we don't need to double up. And I'm a little gun shy after the 2 times I've been in front of the commission for the council. I think we have to be pretty focused. And if you think about last night, that was something they had asked us to do, and they still turned it down.
Yeah, we can.
But anyway, that's a separate topic. So anyway, bottom line, I think there's a state ordinance. I agree with Don. There's probably some education about. I think people are very confused about what goes in the green bin and what doesn't in terms of bags. So I don't know how we educate that. Maybe we ask. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's the right answer. I agree with Don.
I think that because I question if the support would be there, and to me, it's a simple thing. I hate to say this, but it's simple. If the council or the staff feels that this is something that should be done within our city, you have the ordinance. Enact it. I don't think that there's any action on here. I guess we could render an opinion, but I'm not willing to. I think the recommendation, I'd like to see it come from staff or council.
Yeah. Besides, I think Mission Trail sends out newsletter at least once a quarter or once every 2 months about what goes in what bin. They could highlight, don't use those in the green bin. They could just highlight that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, my one question was a bit on top of what you were saying. If the city allows our grocery stores to keep the biodegradable plastic bags in there, and then we know that our waste hauler is not gonna compost them, that is the city liable for not enforcing the compostable, bag requirement of the state. So is it a choice we need to have all our, food item, pre-sales bags to be compostable. And we know that the plastic ones cannot be compostable, then we have to require that they be paper. And that means we have to require our grocers to have paper bags and not plastic bags.
That would be a way we can amend the ordinance, adopt a local ordinance, is to remove the option of compostable bags and only allow paper
Because
bags
we don't have a
or
choice.
something else that is.
Well, I guess I don't know the SB well enough, but I think it just states what kind of bags you have to use. Does it state that those cities have to compost those?
No.
No, it just says you have to use these bags.
It has to use these ASTM.
Yeah. So, which they're doing, so no one's breaking the state ordinance.
Yeah, it's the spirit of the ordinance that's being broken.
What's the implementation, yeah.
Yeah, the issue, that's this, yeah. Right.
There's a disconnect between what the law is saying and what's happening at this.
Right.
What's actually can happen at the.
I think one option is, and maybe this is where you're going, Don, is like we get together and we vote, and if we're unanimous, we say we write a letter to the council. I don't know if we can do that, and just say we would support you considering this ordinance and not start a subcommittee or anything like that. Just say, hey, it's in your wheelhouse. Here's the information. We support it. It's in your wheelhouse. If you support it, run with it. If not,
Yeah, this is kind of coming from like staff wanting to get the perspective of the commission. And residents to read.
I'll go first maybe, and I feel like if we're allowing plastic, and we know it's not gonna be composted, then we're not following the spirit of the state law. And we should be not allowing plastic, that's all gonna go to the landfill. So we should be requiring paper. Unless, we talk nicely with all our grocers and get an agreement that they will be using paper.
And I will say that there would need to be a lot of outreach, and no other cities are doing this. Because there's so many, no other cities have adopted a local ordinance to mandate only paper bags. Because there's a lot going on, SB 54 is coming. So, it would, I think at the grocery stores, the issue like on the logistic level is that they have to look inside the bag to scan the produce, right? With a paper bag, but they're already doing that with the compostable bag. So I would want to do outreach on how it's going to impact them, switching now from compostable to paper. We'd have to do outreach and stuff.
I guess
what we did with the food ordinance.
Another way to look at it is pick our battles. Okay.
But I think they have to look in the bags anyway, because every piece of fruit has got the little reading bar on it, and they have to open it up and zap that.
Yeah.
They have to scan that before they weigh it, so, I think that the education to say, okay, bring your produce home, but after you use it, that bag goes in the trash. Or if you use it to line your pail, that goes out to your compost, you dump your compost material, but you throw the bag in the plastic. I mean,
That's
it
what they
just,
said in the newsletter.
that's what they said in the newsletter, and that just complicates an already. We have trouble with somebody that's got an item, and which of the 3 bins does it go in? Complicating, well, I got this item, but it can't, part of it goes there and part of it goes here.
Yeah.
Other opinions? Let it go.
Philosophically, I have to support the paper bags. I think you don't want anything going in landfills. It's like the manifestation of humans' separation from nature. Like it sounds like, yes, it would be a lot of effort. Part of it's like, I think it's pretty efficient outreach to get it in front of council and see who reacts. I know it's not ideal. You want outreach ahead of time, but at least we get a temperature check that way. And yeah, if it were to pass, this is a system. This is a part I'm sure the answer of, but is there a way that we could pass an ordinance that says this would expire if some sort of representation was achieved within grocery stores? Has that been done before? Do you know an example of that? Okay.
I would say just have mission trails, send out newsletter, highlight that, and in a grocery store, they post sign, encourage people to bring their own produce bag. And they can always pay for the paper bag, 10 cents each. They have smaller one, maybe cost less. They can pay for it.
Do they offer paper bags at any of the grocery stores?
Smaller
In
one,
Russell
I
too?
mean,
For
I
the
know in
produce?
Whole Food, I
They used to
shop there.
they used to offer paper. But I think with this new law, they're only offering the compostable bags now. Because I think paper has disappeared, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not. No.
No,
I
paper
don't
is
know.
still there in
Oh, it is?
grocery store, yeah.
Okay.
But we're talking about for produce. I think produce,
That's right.
Yeah.
produce section doesn't have paper bag. I don't see them. I only see them in Whole
They
Food.
used to,
No.
at Whole Foods.
Whole Food still has paper bag.
That's what I was.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm wrong.
I don't, I do not think that putting another ordinance on this, I think people is gonna challenge it. And the cost, going to, somebody's have to pay for that additional cost. You know, using paper base for the produce.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the
Been
concept.
in twice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the concept that, you know, that we should be using paper, but we just passed a plastic ordinance and then to add this on, potentially confuses people and angers people more. I think if we can somehow do outreach to the council, I mean, I don't know what place we play in this other than adding our support to that. If it ever comes up. But I don't know if we want to spend our critical capital on that, given some of the other issues we have.
Any thoughts?
My thoughts are, you know, I guess I'm one of the educated ones. I can figure out where to put things and I bring my own bags and stuff. And so it's really sort of a no-brainer for me, but I'm not the normal public. So I support it in principle. And it's a matter of, do we spend our capital trying to promote this or do we just end up being bruised and battered without any progress? Maybe Colin has.
Okay, yeah, Colin.
I'm gonna have a hard time summarizing this, by the way. You know, I'm someone that brings bags, like reusable, like my own bags, literally to the grocery store. I've been doing that ever since I lived in Germany, which is, by the way, normal practice there. So everyone does this over there. So I kind of feel like I'm sympathetic to the view that there's an education to be done here. I think this also presents an opportunity because I think most people, when they read the town crier with this clarification for Mission Trails, were probably a bit confused by it. I'm still a bit confused by it. I don't understand why this isn't an execution problem for Mission Trails to separate out the two and make sure it all gets composted. So I'd honestly like to think there's a little bit of leverage that the council might have on Mission Trails but that's a different story. Ultimately, though, I would be not in favor, I think, at this stage of another ordinance on top. I think it seems like it was a tough berth to get this one passed, and I think we're risking fatiguing people a little bit on change, even if we were successful with that. So I'd be in favor, as Don said, more of reinforcing state ordinance. If necessary, having the council pass that just as a performative thing to support it. And on trying to get Mission Trails to see if there's a different way of dealing with this other than throwing what is compostable material into the regular trash.
Do we need a vote on whether we say move on, let it be as is, or whether we want to send a memo to council saying we feel we need to add in paper bags only, or I guess the third option would be up to Mission Trails, lean on Mission Trails to find a way to compost these things or have a cap.
Just a clarification, Mission Trails just collects the waste and they drop it off at the waste facility, which is Newbie. So Newbie is the compost facility, not Mission Trails. Mission Trails is just the hauler. So I don't think that they can do anything because it's not their like
Who do we
landfill.
contract with?
Newbie Island.
We contract in Newbie.
There's already an agreement and those agreements very hard to.
We can't change those or attempt to.
Okay. So I don't think we need to take a vote. I wanted to just get an understanding of what you all thought and get some kind of direction and input.
Just so you have input, are most of us okay with us letting it be for now? those that would really like to do something and have the city do it, make an ordinance, maybe let's speak up.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to know ultimately it'll be up to staff to wanna decide to push this
Right.
forward, but yeah, if you, do you want to say, it sounds like no, no, no. Maybe.
Well, Tom said something earlier to the effect of like, is there a way to support the philosophy of it to say like, hey, you know, we do favor paper bags regardless of ordinance. Yeah, you know, I think we might have a majority for just to say we support that, maybe.
Yeah,
So, would that be helpful?
I think if there were ever to be something done, we can come back to the commission.
Yeah.
But I think that is an understanding that paper bags do make sense in terms of how they're getting disposed of. They can be recycled or put into the compost bin, but it's more of the fatigue that it would be on people, and also the cost or the outreach that would be needed with it.
Okay.
Your
I think,
no ordinance
I think Carl's.
or no.
Carl's right. I think probably if we go around, we're probably all supportive of the you know, a recycled paper bag, being, I don't want to use the word requirement because that implies ordinance, but what was the word that you used?
The norm. I mean, like, we want it to be the norm, or just it's favored.
Yeah, favored. Well, I think by all,
Yeah.
go around, but I think it'd be favored by all of us.
So, may I sum up a little bit? Is that everybody feels it's not a priority to push for an ordinance? Most everybody feels. And that we feel like if there's a way to encourage paper as opposed to the bioplastic bags, we would support that. I think we're done with the discussion items. Now we have staff updates and commissioner updates.
Commissioner updates.
Commissioner updates will first.
Well, I think, this is where we do the electrification subcommittee update,
Yeah.
and then we can give an update on bird safety and the lighting ordinance. We can give two quick ones. And Don or Colm, do you want to run through this, or do you want me to quickly?
Go ahead.
Okay, and then you guys chime in as I'm running through it. So the first thing is we have a quick deck just to update the team on some great brainstorming we've done over the last month. I don't think do not give us any feedback here. This is just our update to you. And then if you have any ideas after, please send them to Tanya and she will forward them to us. Our objective is to come back next month with some more significant recommendations, better researched, to get actual feedback from the team on. Make sense? So this is a 3-page deck. I think I can get through it in 3 to 5 minutes, hopefully. Some of this we went through last time, but we've kind of honed the wording and blown out some of the points. So the objectives of the subcommittee, which is Don, Colm, and I, are to support and accelerate building electrification in Los Altos in alignment with the CAPs. We've cleaned up that wording through policy incentives and community engagement, and we think these are all tied together. Hence the one subcommittee addressing all of them. On the policy side, obviously this would be driving potential ordinances and guidelines for the city. Point number one is we're going to benchmark policies from neighboring cities and other leaders in California on the electrification front, see what policies they've implemented that we might be able to leverage. As we all know, or I think most of us know, I call it BACMID, has a significant deadline with electrification and the elimination of gas appliances, and we're going to align with those and make sure we understand those and what the risks are with those. We're also going to, and this is slightly controversial for a lot of reasons, but we are going to evaluate and adopt or look at reach codes. I think there's a few hurdles here. We understand that, but I think we'd also be remiss if we didn't look at those and consider it one way or another. And then one other brainstorming idea we had on ordinances and guidelines was to require energy audits as part of the permit process. Okay. On the incentive side, again, benchmarking other cities nearby or throughout some of the leaders in California to make sure we're not missing anything obvious that we could leverage. We've always talked about adding city-based or city-funded bonuses to the SDCE rebates or federal rebates that are available currently. These are things we've looked at very briefly in the past, two things, but both reducing permit fees or raising permit fees on non-electrified house permits, or consider variances for electrified houses. We still think those are worth investigating a little more and bringing to closure one way or another. Of course, another option is expediting reviews for electrification projects. And then the final point, which I think we just discussed, briefly hit on earlier, is continuing to support the RFP that the city has out currently. And we need to we're happy to help Tanya bring that to closure. One thing we would point out is that SDCE covers a lot of those RFP requests, and maybe there's a way to bring those in alignment or to leverage those together. Next. And finally, community engagement and outreach. There's a number of thoughts here in order to better educate the community, promote the SDCE yard sign campaign, promote free energy, home energy audits, which are available from SDCE, I believe. Distribute educational materials at the permitting process, so both contractors and homeowners are better aware of what their options are. City announcements and town crier, host an electrification fair, which Carl has done a great job on and is doing a great job on. Yeah. Well, you're leading on with the commission. Educate residents and HVAC contractors on what the benefits are of electrification. Again, just basic education. And then, of course, leverage the city in promoting existing and great SDCE programs, or that appear great, quite frankly. And those are all listed there. And I think that's it. So Don or Cole Militia have something to add to that?
One thing I wanted to mention, Tom, was, originally if you compared it to the presentation last time from Don and Tom when they were a working pair, there was a fourth category around the cap. Based on the feedback from the commission, we took this out and instead included the relevant items in the three sections that Tom showed you. Just wanted to clarify that.
And so next steps for the committee are to please provide feedback to Tanya if any other ideas we should consider, or if you have any editorial on some of the ideas we are considering, we'd love to hear it. Okay.
You said you're going to come back with.
We are going to come back with a more fully blown out set of recommendations in May that we would love to hear feedback for at that point, questions and feedback. And then our goal would be then to take that input and finalize our set of recommendations by June. That's our goal.
We, as Tom was saying, we plan to refine these ideas. Maybe some of them get tossed off the table. We don't presume, and we recommend following through on certain others and then getting feedback from the commission as a whole. Are we on target? not on target with the ones we want to proceed with, and the ones we're sweeping off the table.
Excellent. So bird safety and, yeah, so we had a meeting with the, council last night. We hit about 500, maybe slightly under 500. Which is pretty good for a baseball player. I think, they passed the lighting ordinance subject to, not exactly clear, but, only for remodels, so no compliance required, so new builds and remodels. No compliance period for existing lighting that doesn't comply. So if you have an existing neighbor with a bright light in your yard, that could be a problem. The bird safety was not accepted. And so I think my own editorial, a little disappointed in where we ended up. It's where it ended up out of the planning commission after Nick's presentation. And a bit surprised about a couple things. Number one is this was specifically requested by the council, and so, but there wasn't support for it. And they didn't enable us to answer any questions. And there were a bunch of misunderstandings and a lack of understanding about the facts underlying. So that doesn't mean they would have supported it. But I think it was, from my standpoint, disappointing. We had 1 minute to speak, each of us, and that was it.
Yeah, because I think because those, we have a grand neighborhood, 10 people, they took a lot of time. And those are not on agenda, but they have a concern about. I think that's, our time got squeezed as a result of that, because they have lots of other.
We were there to answer questions, and
I know.
they've asked subcommittee questions generally, and they do not enable us to answer questions. So the net of it is we got the lighting ordinance passed, and there was some support for bird safety, but it's in the future.
Anything else to report from that meeting, environmentally related?
Not really. The only other issue with the grant school issue is kind of environmentally related. They have a big electrical box they want to put on the corner of the street.
Yeah.
The city does for the, I guess it's for
Power transformer.
a transformer. I think it's for the grant.
Grand community center.
For the community center, but it blocks, potentially blocks the view of traffic, and that's a very high traffic area with kids and people walking. So that neighborhood is upset with the placement of that, and they were asking, seems reasonable, asking for a placement of that somewhere else.
That was under the public comments of something not on the agenda, so it's just public comments.
That was, yeah.
I think, go ahead, I'll let you finish.
No, that was the only other environmental thing I was aware of at the meeting. I left after the only other thing I'm aware of was the theater, and I don't know how that ended up.
Well,
They got funding?
one thing is that in late.
For the funding. Sorry. Commissioner update.
Okay. In late 2023, I think, Tom, you got a instruction from the city council, but there is a change in the city council composition. I think the new council member, I'm sorry, Larry Lin, is new. He clearly does not support bird safety. Even we quote the validated ecological data from Mountain View, he completely denied that Los Altos City has any need for that, because we're in a very totally different environment. We don't have that problem. So I feel one is being that the composition of the city council member have changed since that time. The other thing is, I feel when Council Weinberg, when he was speaking, I feel he supported us. But after Council Lin's speech, he just changed his support to non-support, which Yeah, but we have Council Fico support us. And, but they asked, but the mayor asked her if she wants to make a motion that they can have further discussion. She didn't. Yeah, so that's what it comes.
Bid is an update. I don't know if anybody else.
I can go quickly. I had the meeting before this one. I was supposed to be, and I did sit through the meeting and there wasn't anything of environmental nature at that previous meeting that I need to report on. I'll have to go back and think about the topics, but that was the takeaway, that I didn't think there was anything you need to know from there. I'm sorry, am I speaking loud enough, Colin?
You are, thank you.
That was great.
Yeah.
Just on the avoid, I listened to the rest of it, and that was my update, is that the theater got funding to get funding when it comes to the point where it has an environmental impact. So I had a meeting with, a Zoom meeting with, Councilman Vice Mayor Ligar and, the city manager. She had suggested that the last time we met with her to get, input on the work plan. And, so I asked some of these questions. So first of all, we had been directed to together the memo to council asking, for their formal input on the work plan, but I wanted to wait for this meeting to see what I wanted to say. And that was only this Monday. So I wanted to just share what we talked about. So what I heard from the city manager is that we should not worry about funding details. We should clearly communicate what our priority work plan items are and ensure that they align with the CAP and align with the city council priorities. And he suggested that the CAP has been adopted and therefore the city will support it without, so without question in terms of, staff can have a difference of opinion when they propose something to council, or council can decide not to want something, but we should propose what we want with clear, these are our priorities. The other thing I did discuss with them how we could work better with staff, city, and make our work. So Gabe said that, what happened last year with how staff move forward with presenting the commission's report without it being final in the case of the electrification committee, or without having input, was maybe not the right way to go about it. And I think it's clear in the handbook that if staff has a disagreement with the environmental commission, with a commission's report, they need to discuss it with the commission and state that. So they said that, they'll look into, the process and how we, and I did ask that, if there is something being presented on behalf of the environmental commission, that the environmental commission be allowed to be there, answer questions, and support it, which was clearly not the case yesterday. It's disappointing. So
Did he respond? He said we should be.
He said yes, but he also said that let's work through it to make sure we have more positive and efficient way of doing things. So that's kind of the fuzzy of that. They were confused about assigning liaisons, both Nisa and Gabe, despite it being clearly in the handbook that I think Nisa thought that we're not allowed to. assign liaisons to other commissions, and Gabe thought it would be, he isn't. Would be not the best use of our time. I did not say that, the commission should be allowed to decide when we're donating our time, what is the best use of our time, but next time I have a discussion, maybe, that's something to discuss. So, in terms of, maybe I want to share, so what I did put together based on their guidance, what I think I would present, we would present or send as a memo to council. And Lisa did say, I think your plan is fine, but just to be, completely, safe, make sure nobody points fingers, send it to council and say, what is the formal, feedback on this? Right. So I think I shared with you the third thing. Yeah. So I think I have to update the energy piece, based on, what, how you stated. But the other thing that Gabe was suggesting, is that they might want to, work on decarbonizing all the public buildings as part of the energy thing. So, yeah, so I simplified the wording a little bit, so that everything looks like one thing, and we'll try to put down, the timeline, and where the priority comes from in terms of the now published council priority for 2025. So there's the, and if there is different way of presenting the energy piece, please share that with Tanya. I added the last thing with an asterisk that, we'd have to agendize it for next time and discuss if the commission would want to take on decarbonizing public buildings, as an addition to the energy work.
Can you send this out to us and then we can give you quick
Yes.
feedback? Yeah.
And then, what else? So the green infrastructure, again, I just simplified it and combined it into one thing and then added the council priority things. In the transportation is where there's a little bit of difficulty, with the second piece, which is the promote walkable, bikeable city and encourage shared mobility, which I said, that appointed a liaison and then we want to just work with, to bring forward the fact that this is something that's in the cap, which is not clearly obvious to the other commissions. I mean, it may be, they may have heard of it and they think, but they don't know it specifically. So I have to clarify, and maybe get some guidance from the commission, agendize again next time, see how we want to attack that piece. But in the meanwhile, I could just do independent research and until told specifically not to already requested meetings with the planning commission and complete streets commission. If I do get a meeting, just do a discussion and see how they want to move forward and not do anything more until they have appointments. And then on the resource, so then I put down timelines. I'm hoping to be done with the deconstruction end of Q2. So then maybe we can focus on some of the other things and hopefully, because we're not getting another commissioner till September. So probably the one working on transportation. Unless somebody else wants to join me from the others. That's, and then I also just edited the rest of it, the one with the details. Further down on this, so please share it. Tanya highlighted what it is, and so please take a look at anything anyone else is working on.
And you want feedback by, how quickly do you need it?
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yes.
And-
I'm hoping to get this to Gabe before the next council meeting.
Okay.
So potentially either he'll put it on the consent calendar. And council just approve it, or if they want to have a discussion, we can pull it out and have a discussion. So as soon as you do share it, as soon as you can, send feedback to Tanya this week. This week? Well, I mean, within a week. Feedback in
And then can I just ask a question? So develop plan to decarbonize all the public buildings. I assume that's solar and battery storage or is it also hot water, heat water?
Don't
heat
know the
pumps and
details,
everything? Okay.
but Gabe was hinting that that might be a large budget item. So I don't know what it entails in the.
Yeah, and
budget
what
council.
role would we play? I think is my, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it'd be, well, I'm assuming there is guidance to be given, but I don't know exactly. But it was something that, like the bird safety.
Yeah.
And lighting, it's something
Yeah, yeah,
that may come to us. So we can talk about it. We can put it on the agenda to discuss next time so that if it does come to us, we can talk about it. Yeah, so that's. Yeah, that's my brief of my discussion. Is there anything else? Yeah. I have not. No, okay. I have not had a chance to. The press meetings.
Any updates from the team?
I can say at least I've read some publications recently, speaking negatively of the concept of ecosystem restoration and the idea of trying to not focus on the past and look to present conditions in the future. So I just want to put that out there that I am sorting through those arguments just to see, what is the right way to message this. Potentially restoration is still a helpful means of communicating what would be most effective in the end. But that's something I'm certainly considering. And then this sort of goes on the next thing, but I certainly think we could bring some presentations to next month's sort of in the system of Tom's, where we'd at least start to have some solutions to discuss and research that we will be doing.
I just want to add something. Yeah. It's not complete restoration issue, but I kind of share a video I asked Tanya to share with all of you. All the council members attended that particular webinar. Michael Lara, he's from Stanford. And I think right now there's been a lot of talk about Firewise home. Certainly, I think that maybe you will be asked, I don't know. I feel that's going to be elevated to a very important things that the council member will want us or planning together to work on that. I mean, we will be providing materials and things, do and don'ts and what use, just fire safe a home. I mean, this is a very expensive area, and it's the biggest asset many people have. And because of LA fires, there's been a lot of talk, I think, across the area. So in your conversation, so I think our urban forest, we can contribute to that, even though it's not completed, but it's part of it.
So for clarification, next in May, you'll report out just updates? Or do you plan to have asks from the commissioners?
Open to get feedback on the solutions in consideration at that time, and the lines of research that we are filling in.
Okay, so kind of similar to what should mind it today.
Yeah, without another, yes, yeah. But no, I'm saying more similar to what Tom did in the update section, but just I would like to put it in so that we can have a proper discussion about it.
Yeah.
Any other? Anything else that is relevant to the commission?
Staff updates?
Yes. So The seventh commissioner will not happen until I think the regular commission recruitment starts, so it's September. And then the last time I told you about a grant that I was working on, and that Commissioner Hecht was helping support on some solar numbers and communicating with one of a solar installer to get some numbers. So that grant was submitted 2 weeks ago, and fingers crossed. So the grant was to request funds for, I think I mentioned this last time, solar on certain city buildings, so City Hall and Grant Park. Solar and battery storage. And yeah, so all we can do is wait now and see if we get the grants. Did you want to add anything?
No, good list on that. It was last minute or came down to the wire. Do you know when you'll hear?
They didn't say, didn't specify, but I will let you all know as
That'd
soon
be
as I know.
good if we get something out of it, yeah.
One more thing, sorry, the Arbor Day, Greentown is, you know, doing something, so please look out for something from Gary and if available, it'd be nice to have as many of us there as possible.
And then third update is on the electrification RFP. So the last day to submit any proposals was on the 7th, and we only got one proposal, and it was way above budget, way above budget. I think it's at $1 million. So, it will be up to the subcommittee to kind of figure out next steps on that. But so we won't be reopening it or anything like that. We'll just, I think we'll let the subcommittee weigh in on.
Did the people that the previous subcommittee was chatting with last year, were they notified? None of them wanted to, or did they know that the RFP was out?
So we can't send like updates to them, and they didn't apply.
None of them did. Okay. Likely that it was. Well, I don't know. No discussion. Just question. Okay. Thank you.
It was pretty surprised. Yeah.
Where are the RFPs that the city puts out posted?
It's the website's called Planet Bids. It's a new website. I don't know if you'll be able to see it anymore because
It's several, when you want to look for a city RFP, it's several clicks. You have to go doing business with the city, and then you go down further, and it has a thing that you can look for RFPs, and then it sends you to this other site, and you can then it wants you to register to get the package, but you can click another button and say view the package.
I will say that,
You
yeah,
have to register.
I'm not an expert on that process. I'm happy to say that I'm not. So I just created the RFP and sent it to someone.
It took me a while to figure out how to find it.
Okay.
So it's not 2 clicks, it's about 4.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that is all.
Okay.
First off, update.
All right, so we adjourn the meeting.
Potential future agenda items.
Oh, yes, sorry, we don't.
And I just wanted
Very
to,
important.
I got clarification from the city clerk on this. So when commissioners are asking for future agenda items, they should try to give as much detail as possible on what the agenda item is, what the expectation is, like if it's a discussion, if it's just a presentation, if it's, so as much information as possible without having discussion.
I have 2.
maybe three. One is I would like to invite the new Greentown interns. At our June meeting, I think, when we
To present their plans for research so that we can give them guidance
before they do their work. Invite the new Greentown interns
to
To give guidance on.
for them to present their, proposed summer work plan and for us to be able to give them guidance. And then I want to bring back deconstruction. Not 100% sure if I will be ready in May. So either May, June, where I would like to ideally present a summary and a recommendation and discuss next steps with the commission.
And then potentially, I would also like to. Sorry. Present a reports
Next month or the month after on an update on transportation. There may not be more guidance, I'm not 100% sure yet. And then fourth thing would be to discuss any changes to the work plan. So maybe there's a quarterly review of the work plan, where if you want to add things or take things out or streamline things, you may want to be able to do that. For example, if you want to, you're guided to work on decarbonization of the buildings, you can add that in. If we're guided that we're not allowed to be liaisons, then we figure out how we do the transportation work, or we scratch it out. So I would like to have a discussion on the work plan.
So, I don't think the work plan can be changed once it's sent to council, unless obviously Gabe said this particular
Yeah,
thing.
so what he did say, the other thing he said is that it's not set in stone. If something changes across the year, you're allowed to let us know. So that was my understanding, and but maybe. But yeah, again, if we are guided by council to work on something else or something changes in our ability to do something, we should be able to maybe we'll deeper into this.
I'll get more clarification on that. Okay, and then. So, does everyone?
Does anyone oppose any of those?
I
No?
mean, I had an additional one. I don't oppose any of those.
Okay, so those are all good.
I have one comment on that. I think we can request and provide. I don't think I want to use the word guidance to Greentown interns, because they're really not they're not working for us, quote unquote. But I think we can provide them insights and other things that would help their efforts, but I stop short of using the word guidance.
What I would like.
Question being is, can we change the word guidance in that recommendation?
We could change it to advice. So what I want is in that action item for us to be able to tell them things, not just ask questions. Not tell them what to do, but provide an opinion.
Provide them insight.
Yes, provide insight.
Okay.
In the spirit of providing as much detail.
Provide insight. All right. Okay. Any other comments on those four or clarifying questions on those? Okay. Commissioner Nee, go ahead.
Thank you. The Silicon Valley Clean Energy Full Service Program, we'd spoken in the past about getting a presentation to the commission on this. They'd told us originally that they prefer to wait until they launched it. I haven't reached out to them in a while to figure out whether they're still open to presenting to us, but if the commission agrees that this would be beneficial, then I would I would try and get that scheduled for an upcoming meeting, maybe even the next one. So it will be an informational session with a chance for us to ask clarifying questions, but I don't think we'll need a discussion.
Okay, yeah, we voted on that last time, but I think that was helpful that you provided more clarification on that. It would just be a presentation with Q&A. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Now's your time.
Aforementioned update on the forestry, this is restoration. I think you've got.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one would be the electrification.
Yes, so the electrification, and then we mentioned one more, so during the meeting, electrification and there was one more that we mentioned during the meeting. I thought it was that we casually mentioned.
Around the work plan, around.
Yes.
Huh?
You want to do the deconstruction?
Yeah.
follow-up, right?
already.
That's on there, okay.
Okay, and maybe it was the decarbonization building.
Oh, yeah, so that would be, when we review any updates to the work plan and progress. I think it'd be part of that. Unless you want to have it as different as an addition.
I don't think we know enough about the scope of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Let's leave it
understand
there.
the topic, but
Yeah.
not the scope of
Just
what
so
the
that
city is
it
trying to
comes
do.
that we're able to discuss it after.
We passed with the electric bear, so certainly can give an update, we don't have to put it in discussion though. So, I would say it should be on the agenda as an update, but
You can provide an update during like the.
yeah.
We can
Thank you
provide
much.
comments and feedback without discussion.
Oh, we can?
Yeah. You just can't have a discussion.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay, thank you. Meeting is adjourned. 8:23.
Thanks.
Okay.
You guys.
I think we-
Bye-bye.